Sanvanani Dumilan, good evening and welcome to episode 222 of the Private Property Podcast. I'm your host, Uzamanto Kumalo. It's the Wednesday edition of the Private Property Podcast, and if you're joining us for the first time, well, you have missed out on a whole lot of great content that we have brought to your screens. So do make sure that you go to our Facebook and YouTube pages to catch up on all the great episodes that we've already had. To all our regular viewers from the Top Fan Gang members on Facebook, as well as our other social media platforms, welcome back. You know how we do it every single weekday at 7 p.m. We bring you a hot property topic where we get an expert to speak to us to better navigate our home ownership journey. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're looking to buy, to sell, to build, you're a tenant or a landlord. This certainly is the property show that you want to make sure that you're tuned into regularly to get your latest dose of property knowledge. Now, as usual, you know how I like talking about the whole host of other shows that we have here across the Private Property social media pages. But before I get to that, one of the things that you would have probably noticed across our social media pages is that, of course, we are celebrating our 1-year brand anniversary. Now, if you remember, this time last year was the time that we went green, and we certainly do appreciate how you have walked this journey with us over the past year, as we've certainly reinvented ourselves in the market and reignited our passion in property. We do hope that you'll continue walking your property journey with us, not just 1 year later, but for many more years to come. So do go to our website on www.privateproperty.co.za to check out the whole host of property needs that we can cater to for you on your property journey, from looking to buy, to rent, to sell, and of course our advice section if you're looking to get a little bit more property knowledge on all things relating to property. Now, one of the other things that you're going to find on our website is, of course, the Sherlock Holmes hunt that we are currently running. We are on the 9th week of this 12-week competition, where every single Monday we share a unique riddle that we want you to crack. And if you think you're able to crack the riddle, well, you're going to stand a chance of walking away with a 5,000 Rand voucher on Friday right here on the Private Property Podcast. And because we love making the winner's circle even bigger, we also give away a spot prize of 500 Rand in cash every Wednesday and Thursday. So later on in the show, we're going to be announcing who that potential winner is of the 500 Rand in cash. Remember, you have to be watching us live in order to claim that prize. Well, you know that we certainly love making the circle bigger here on Private Property, and we certainly love how you have welcomed the new brand in the past year and continued to engage. Welcome back to episode 222 of the Private Property Podcast. I'm your host, Khumalo. Well, gremlins will sometimes want to get the better of us, but of course, as usual, we'll never let them win. As I was saying, we are, of course, celebrating our 1-year brand anniversary here on Private Property, and we do thank you at home for walking this journey with us as we turned green for the past year. You've continued to engage with us across our social media platforms, and we certainly do urge you to continue doing so, and of course sharing this with your friends and family so we can make the property circle bigger. Now, of course, it is a Wednesday, so later on you can also look forward to the First Time Home Buyers Show with SC Clarkson as she speaks to somebody who's walked that first-time home buying journey, and they reflect on how they went through that process, but also continued to grow their property portfolio. Now, on Thursdays and Tuesdays, you can look forward to the Farming Podcast with Umbali Nogo, who talks all things agriculture. So if you've ever wanted to go into the agricultural space, then that certainly is the show for you. Every Mondays and Fridays, Chad brings you the Home Shoppers Show. So if you're in the market for that new property, do make sure that you tune in, and he'll give you a snapshot of what you can expect in some of the best complexes and estates that this country has on offer. Now, as it is a Wednesday, you know that later on in the show, we will be giving away that 500 Rand in cash. So do make sure that you stay tuned during our Sherlock Holmes hunt. You want to make sure that you're watching us live, as we will need you to drop us a text down here below in order for you to claim your prize. Now, to get started with our conversation this evening on our 1-year brand anniversary here at Private Property, we are talking an expert guide to online auctions. And I'm joined this evening by Barney Jacobson, who is a residential manager and lead auctioneer at AuctionInc. Barney, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. Barney, I'm just going to ask you if you can unmute your mic. I see that your mic is still muted on your side.
Okay, apologies, Amatungwa. I thought that it was automatically unmuted there. It's fantastic to be with you here on your brand anniversary and to be with you over these exciting times. And I think you guys are doing an unbelievable job in the property market, and it's great being part of it all.
It's only a pleasure, Barney. And I think one of the great things about, doing property or being in property during this era, as you so rightfully point out, I think there's so many different opportunities that there are in the market right now. It can be a very exciting, place to be in. And I think that's one of the things that actually gets me quite excited about our conversation this evening, of course, on online auctions. And I think for viewers to I almost want to put a disclaimer that we'll probably primarily, be focusing on, I'll say, conventional auctions as opposed to sheriff's auctions, because we know that they're also sheriff's auctions. I think when we want to look at sheriff's auctions, we almost need to have an episode by itself, because there's almost a relatively different dynamic we always need to consider in that regard. So for viewers at home, we're talking normal online auctions. And one of the things, or some of the things that you can certainly look forward to this evening is, how they effectively run. I mean, I've certainly seen the rise of online auctions and different auction houses having that as an option before, having it as an option now, especially as we, living in COVID, some of the do's and don'ts of online auction, and how you at home can make sure that you don't fall, prey to any scam that may potentially happen. Unfortunately, one of the other things that we are aware of is scammers are also on the job every single day. So we want to always be alert, and perhaps what some of the best practices are when it comes to online auction, and how you at home can best prepare yourself for an online auction. Those are some of the things that we will be exploring with Barney. If you have any questions and comments at home when it comes to online auctions, do drop them down here below, and we'll be dealing with them during the course of our conversation. Now, Barney, let's perhaps start with, how different online auctions are from, we'll say, the conventional, going to an auction house. Is there a difference, or is it essentially the same thing? It's just that this is now on an online platform.
Can I even go like a step backwards and say, like, also in South Africa, obviously, I mean, it's covered in all the other shows. I mean, there's never been a better time to buy. Interest rates at the lowest in 5 decades. And if you're buying at the moment, they're fantastic buying opportunities. And if you're selling, the opportunities are there as well, because you can be buying upwards or buying downwards. And either way, you're going to be in a good position. So, yes, Zamatunga, basically asking about the difference between online and on-site auctions, or a multi-prop kind of basis auction. Yes, so there are quite a few differences with the online auction. Typically on an on-site auction, for example, a person gets to view the property 1 hour prior to the auction, and they can look around the property and they can sort of have a look at what they want to buy, and they in the property that they're bidding on. Different to obviously the on-site auction, where you're bidding and you've had to have viewed the property, preferably prior to to buying the property. I mean, we have noticed lately, funny enough, that buyers even from overseas, we've had buyers from London buying properties in South Africa without even viewing the property, and I think it's quite a common practice. But obviously, the best common practice would be for the client to view the property. So typically, there would be either viewing days, or the broker would arrange for the client to view the property so that they can do their correct homework before bidding on auction. Quite a few, yeah.
And one of the things, Barney, that we typically say to our viewers at home is, especially those who are not as seasoned, is obviously always make sure that you view a property, because you may not have an eye for, spotting what can work or not work if you're buying a property that you haven't viewed. So, I think it is one of those things that if you yourself can't view it, perhaps get, a friend or a family to be able to go there. And I think one of the things that I certainly like with online auctions is, as you're saying, oftentimes the broker will then organize the times when you can have access to that particular property, so that you can get a sense of the property and do the viewing before, of course, the online bid is going to be. And, Barney, perhaps take us through some of the do's and don'ts of online auction, because I think as it's becoming a growing trend that a lot of consumers are going to want to probably opt for, what are some of the things that we should be aware of in terms of what we should do and shouldn't be doing if considering going the online auction route?
Yeah, so obviously you mentioned before that the typically the buyer wants to be dealing with a reputable company, when they're dealing, in the online space. So typically a company like ours would, like AuctionInc, would hold the hand of the client, all the way through the process. So we would assist them, assist them in the viewing, assist them in gaining information about the property, and also in the whole procedure. So typically, any good auction house would have all the details also on their website, and a person would be able to gain all the information they needed to understand the auction process. Because typically, auctions, the reason why people choose the auction route is it gives the seller a fast sale, and also, so what has to happen is that the buyer needs to know that he's got everything in place. So typically there's a deposit required. Different auction houses would work on different deposits, which I'd imagine, that range typically from 10% upwards, some are 15%, and some could be even more, 21.4%. So there's some kind of deposit required by the buyer. And then the buyer would obviously need to know that he's got his finance in place. So he'd be having to talk to his own bond originator or the bank and make sure that all the finance is in place, and make sure that the property that he's bidding on, or she's bidding on, is the property that they are looking for. And the fantastic thing about auctions as well is that it's a very seamless and easy process to buy a property and also to sell property. So it makes it a lot easier, because often all of us in life, we tend to procrastinate, we drag our heels, and we don't make the decisions we need to make, to move forward in life. And typically the auction pushes all these things for the buyer and the seller, in the correct kind of directions, and makes it a very easy transaction, for both parties. And we're getting some fantastic results for both buyers and sellers at the moment, who are very pleased with what they buy. And it's a very easy process. The person would put down a registration deposit on the auction, the buyer. In our case, it would be 10,000 Rand. In other companies, the deposit could range to a higher amount. So they'd put down the registration deposit, they'd register for the auction, and then they would be allowed to bid on the auction. Different auction houses work with different durations of auctions. We've opted for a shorter auction because we find that typically most of the bidding occurs, towards the middle to end of an auction. So our auctions are fast, they're dynamic, they're typically 15 minutes long. It works very well for the buyer, it works well for the seller. People know where they're at, they place their bids, and they get to bid and see if they can get the property at the price they want. Obviously, in the last few minutes, people tend to want to bid in the last few minutes, and if that happens, then the time is extended of the auction, and it gives the other party a chance to counter the bid if they need to, and then you'd get a final bidder at the end, and the final bidder hopefully then is the buyer of the property. Works in increments, so typically increments could be bigger in the beginning, or they're stable, and they bid for some point of view, and they would then bid, and the increments may change, and they would get to bid and see where they want to go to. So typically a buyer should know where they want to bid to, and bid to where they're comfortable to bid to, because that's important.
Mm-hmm. I can't agree with you more there, Barney, that it is so important for you to know where you're bidding at, which probably brings me to my next question, Barney, because I know that a lot of people who probably haven't done online auctions before and perhaps are, exploring doing it and maybe do it for the first time. Suppose they end up going, online, and they sign up and they pay the registration amount and they do bid, and it just so happens that their amount is, the highest, and they essentially the person who's going to be buying the property. Can people at home almost just decide, let's say a few hours later or a day later, that actually I don't want to buy this. Perhaps this was a bit premature. Maybe I should have given it a bit more thought, because I think sometimes, especially if you're not used to the online auctioneering space, never mind just, housing auctions, you could easily get quite excited with how everything goes, and as you were saying, it can be a very short period of time. So can people at home sort of pull out after they've been they're the final bidder? We know that they're going to the property is going to be going to them. What are some of the dynamics with that?
Okay, so we try to keep the whole process very simple, and the whole procedure and the way the auction works, our bidding process and our bidding platform, is a very easy process. So it's not very intimidating. It's very easy to use. It's just a matter of swiping should you want to bid. On the online space, it actually gives you more time than the on-site typically, because you've got a certain time period to think about it, to work out, and then to place your bid. So unfortunately, the transaction is a binding transaction, because if we allowed buyers to just go out of transactions, then we wouldn't be able to work with real sellers as well. So we have got real sellers. We look for real buyers in return.
So to our viewers at home, we are, of course, this evening talking an expert guide to online auctions. I'm joined this evening by Barney Jacobson, who's a residential manager and the lead auctioneer at AuctionInc. If you've got any questions and comments when it comes to auctions, do send them through down here below. Now, Barney, one of the things that I definitely want us to cover is, of course, and we briefly touched on it yesterday, the issue of being scammed. And of course, with a lot of different kinds of scams being on the rise right now, what can viewers at home do to guarantee that they do not fall prey to a potential, online auction scam when it comes to property? What are some of the things that we need to essentially do to make sure that we are, in fact, dealing with a reputable auction house, and that when we do put down that registration deposit, it's going to the right company, as opposed to it going somewhere where we don't quite know and won't be able to get it back at the end of the auction?
Yes, I think that's a very good point. The thing is that with funny enough, with the auction business, if you look worldwide, like in America, often it's third, fourth, fifth generation businesses. So typically, AuctionInc, started off as part of the Masingita group, but some of the founding members of it are in third generation auctioneers. You're looking for a reputable auction house, that you can work with, sort of a household name like ourselves, AuctionInc. And there are a few auction houses around. So I think, if people look around, they can work with a reputable company, work with a company that they know, and a company that can hold their hand. So, typically, if you're working with one of the top 5 or whatever the case of auction type companies, then you should be, in safe hands. I haven't, known, myself about many scams in terms of the property side of things. But no doubt that there could be some.
We are taking your questions.
To work with a reputable auction house that's going to assist you, that's going to do some hand holding, both for the buyer and the seller, give the correct advice. Not every auction house is auctionable, and, not everyone's applicable to buy from auction. So our brokers would give the necessary advice to people and say, of what they should and shouldn't do. I think that's quite important.
We are taking your questions and comments at home this evening as we celebrate our 1-year brand anniversary on private property. Of course, this is the 1-year mark of when we went green. We certainly do love hearing from you, so do drop us some love. I'm seeing some of the green hearts that a lot of you are posting down here below. Do keep them coming. Now, to go to your questions, we've got a question here from Natalie LaRue on Facebook asking, if you pay a deposit and bid and don't win, do you get your deposit back?
Yes, certainly. So if you are the highest bidder and you put down the deposit, in our case, it would be a 15% deposit. The deposit is totally refundable. There's no cost whatsoever to the buyer.
So, Matlatse, I saw your comment there with auctions and the green hearts. We've got another question here coming from Rochelle Miller, also on Facebook, asking, what is the different types of auction available?
What are the different types of auction? I think, auctions work in, different environments. There's typically what they call a multi-prop auction, where you have several passes of auction. Multi-prop auction could take place online, or it could take place on site. And you also have what is called, you have on-site auctions, online auctions, and you have a hybrid auction. So a hybrid auction would take place online and on site. So both. So a person could choose, what type of auction they want to bid on. We've opted, in our company for the more in the singular type of auction, especially for residential properties, because it gives the buyer, more of a chance, and it's a dedicated auction to their property. So there can be more attention put for the buyer and more attention put for the seller on the property, and and generally a better result can be found. Because obviously with auction as well, just like traditional property, it's still got to be transferred, etc. And all the things have to be put in place properly. So it makes for an easier transaction.
More of your questions and comments coming in as we also celebrate our 1-year brand anniversary here on private property. We've got another one from Natalie LaRue on Facebook asking, if you win an auction, how does the transfer costs differ from a normal property purchase?
Okay, so it's exactly the same. The transfer costs are exactly the same.
And I think that's one.
At the moment, our finance minister, I'm not sure in the last budget meeting, but nothing's been changed there. So I think up to R1 million, isn't it? That there are no transfer duties, and then it goes on a sliding scale. So transfer duty is not so bad in South Africa at the moment. At some of the lowest levels, transfer duty, and also interest rates at their lowest levels. So, but the transfer process and everything is exactly the same. Deeds Office is looking in South Africa to go digital. They haven't gone digital yet. When that happens, the whole process may be much quicker. But in South Africa, typically it takes 2 to 3 months, as we all know, to transfer. So an auction property would go through the same process.
And we've got another question here, and I think, Barney, this is the one where we're almost going to have to make a slight distinction between the conventional online auction versus the sheriff's auction. This comment is coming from Facebook from Angus Tufter saying, we almost purchased a house on auction, but decided not to. There were too many costs involved. And perhaps almost dispel the myth around, the online auction having, we'll say, additional costs to the conventional way of buying a property, obviously versus a sheriff's auction auction, which has other associated costs that, sort of buying a house or a property rather in the conventional way wouldn't incur?
Yeah, so a traditional auction like we do, whether it be for any type of disposal, would typically be, the normal costs involved. So there's no extra additional costs. Mm-hmm. I think opting to go like the sheriff's route, you've got to be like quite an advanced purchaser or investor to be able to go in that route, because there's a lot of intricacies with buying from the sheriff. Buy from the sheriff, you buy the property completely, as is. You get immediate occupation. So if someone tries to occupy it, or if it's illegally occupied, you're responsible for getting rid of that illegal person who's occupying. And the big problem with the sheriff's auctions, if you go to a sheriff's auction as well and you're a novice, they give you what the outstanding, someone calls out from the crowd what the outstanding rates and taxes are, electricity and water. And that's not guaranteed either. So if someone calls out 50,000, it ends up being 250,000. You're responsible for all those costs. So when you buy from a normal auction house like ourselves, you get it with a clean financial bill of health. You're not responsible for the outstanding electricity, water, all rates and taxes. So the whole process, is a lot better. And typically with the sheriff's auctions also, you don't have access to the properties. They don't offer access. So obviously people can get illegal access by, well, not necessarily illegal, but they can be looking at the property from the outside. Somebody could jump over the wall or whatever they want to do, or they could knock on the door and ask someone to open if someone's living in it. But it's very precarious. So, I would really recommend for a novice not to go, the sheriff's route. It's really experienced a buyer and someone who's got quite a high risk appetite, because you've got to have the necessary capital. And I don't think everyone's got the capital to cover all those unknown costs that may occur in a sheriff's auction. But in a conventional auction, we circumvent all of that, and it's a really easy process.
Well, Barney, you've already answered a question that, Rochelle essentially wrote. I hadn't posed it. And Rochelle's question was, can a buyer view the municipality amount due on the property beforehand? And this would obviously be, in the case of the sheriff's auction, as you've said, that you typically wouldn't have that data. It may sometimes get called out, but it may very well be the incorrect data. But of course, when you're doing we'll call it the conventional online auction, like, for example, with AuctionInc, that data is readily available, because the process essentially is the same as when you, buy a normal property. And the seller is the one who'd be in charge of also making sure that they clear there any outstanding municipal bills, so it's not on you as the buyer to clear that amount. And now, Barney, before I let you go, I think any final tip for our viewers at home who are now considering going into the online auction space or buying their next property via an online auction, any final tips for them to make sure that they have a smooth journey, a seamless journey, and end up obviously ultimately buying a property that they'll be happy with?
Yeah, I think, the whole essence is to build a relationship with the brokers of the company, build a relationship with a broker who you want to deal with on the property. Don't be shy to ask questions, even if they sound stupid, and get the answers that you need, get the hand-holding you need. In our case, someone could even come into our offices and they'll be led through the process, whatever. If they need help on the telephone, they'll be led through the process. So, do your homework, do your due diligence, know what you're buying, make sure it's what you want, make sure you're happy with your purchase, and you get an opportunity to buy a property in a much easier way. And there's fantastic buying opportunities at the moment. And there's never been a better time to buy. And I honestly believe that around the world, looking at things, I think a lot of things are about to change. And I think there's great buying opportunities at the moment. And for sellers as well, great time to sell, because you can upgrade, as I said earlier, you can downgrade, and you're buying in and selling out at the same kind of levels. So never been better time to buy than now.
Mm-hmm. And Barney, that's a great place to leave it at. The one thing that I would add to our viewers at home that you highlighted is building a relationship with the broker is so crucial. And particularly to those viewers at home, who would call themselves property investors, one of the great things with building relationships with brokers is that they then send you some of the properties that they're just about to put up. So when you're even very clear with them that this is the kind of property I'm looking for, perhaps you're looking to buy an investment unit and you have your specs, they very readily, forward you the property, sometimes even before listing. So cultivating that relationship with brokers tends to help quite a lot because they're able to get sort of that first glance at all of the properties. So Barney, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It certainly has been a pleasure to have you on the show.
It's my pleasure, and it's so great that we've been on this brand anniversary of yours, and fantastic to be with you, and fantastic to deal with private property.
Thank you so much there, Barney. And we've got a comment here coming from Rochelle Miller saying, very informative. Thank you, Barney. And with the green heart saying family. Thank you very much there, Rochelle. Now, we're going to go for a quick break. It is a Wednesday, so we're not quite done yet. We're going to go for a quick break. When we come back, we will be announcing the lucky winner of our spot prize. Make sure you stay on the live because the only way you can claim your prize is if you text us down here below. We're going to be back just after this. Welcome back to episode 222 of the Private Property Podcast. I'm your host, Uzamantungwa Khumalo. It's also the 1-year brand anniversary of Private Property as we celebrate 1 year since going green. And of course, it is the end of our Wednesday edition of the show, which also means that we will be giving away that 500 Rand in cash to one lucky viewer. And the potential winner of that 500 Rand in cash this evening goes to Tembega Ndlovu. Tembega Ndlovu, if you're on the live and you're watching, Gajeni, do drop us a message down here below in order for you to claim that 500 Rand in cash. And if you want to be like Tembega Ndlovu, all you have to do is to enter our Sherlock Holmes competition on our website. That's www.privateproperty.co.za. And all you have to do is to certainly let us know where the riddle leads you. And of course, the big prize there is the one that we give away every single Friday. That is the 5,000 Rand voucher. And on Wednesday and Thursday, we like to keep the winning circle bigger and make it bigger. And we give away the 500 Rand voucher, 500 Rand in cash to one lucky viewer. So Tembega Ndlovu, I am waiting for the team to let me know if you are on the live. Drop us a message below, Makacheni, and you will be walking away with that 500 Rand in cash. And in the event where Tembega is not on the live, unfortunately with us, then we're going to move on to our potential lucky second winner who will be walking away with that cash prize. Now, remember, you have to be watching us live for Wednesday and Thursday edition if you want to claim your prize. It's that simple to walk away with a midweek 500 Rand. I think, I love saying how an extra 500 Rand is always nice. You know how I love giving away, whether it's money or vouchers or whatever the case is. So, Tembega, we are waiting to hear from you if you are watching us this evening. And of course, you at home, as you continue watching us on the live, I'm absolutely loving all the love that you're giving us down here below as we celebrate our 1 year brand anniversary, loving all the green hearts that we're seeing across our feed. Do continue showing us the love. across our social media pages, whether it's Facebook, it's YouTube, it's Twitter, or of course, rather on Facebook. We certainly love hearing from you at home. And of course, one of the other ways that you can, get in touch with us is to visit our website to check out all the great content that we also bring on your screens on our website. We've got, of course, the advice section on the website, as well as a whole host of other content that you can look forward to. Now, I see my colleague is letting me know whether Stembega Ndlovu is in fact on the live or not. And I see that there's no sign of Stembega. And so the potential second winner of this 500 Rand cash prize is Megan van Schalkwyk. Megan van Schalkwyk, if you are watching on the live, then do drop us a text down here below, and you're going to be walking away with that 500 Rand in cash. So we're going to give Megan another, minute or so she can drop us a text. So if you are watching, do make sure that you drop us that text, Megan, and the 500 Rand in cash is yours. Now, remember to continue entering the Sherlock Holmes competition. You can enter as many times as you would like. There is no limit on the number of times that you can enter. This week is, of course, week 9 of the Sherlock Holmes competition. As I keep saying, I think, depending which week it is, I think some provinces have a bit of an up than other provinces in terms of just understanding where the riddle might take you. So do make sure that you try and crack that riddle, because you can stand a chance of walking away with that 5,000 Rand voucher at the end of the week, as well as, of course, the 500 Rand in cash today and tomorrow. And I see that Megan is in the house, and there she is saying, hey, I'm here. So Megan, congratulations. You walk away with that 500 Rand in cash. The team will be in touch with you in order for you to retrieve your money. Well, that's it from myself, Zamantungwa Khumalo, on this brand anniversary as we celebrate 1 year of going green. Thank you so much for walking this journey with us for the past year. Of course, continuing to watch the Private Property Podcast every single weekday, and the whole host of other shows that we bring to your shows now, of course, every weekday at 8 p.m. It certainly always is a pleasure to be with you and engage with you across our social media platforms. That's it from myself and the rest of the team. We'll be back on your screens tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Until then, hoping you're staying home and staying safe.
I'm Rick Niedling. I'm an Olympic gold medalist and shareholder and marketing director of Olduvie Estate, which recently acquired Pearl Valley Estate. I've been living in the beautiful Paul Franschhoek Valley for the last 5 years. We are situated right in the heart of the Cape Winelands. Security is our #1 priority, and it's something we work on every day. And this has earned us the reputation of being the safest estate in Africa. The lifestyle that this area has to offer truly is country living at its best. We're just 5 minutes away from the historic town of Paarl. Paarl really is an incredible area to explore, with little gems like the Spice Route and Fairview Farms. But the biggest attraction is the excellent schools. Franschhoek, on the other hand, is a major international tourist destination, and also known as the culinary capital of South Africa, with a diverse offering for every palate and occasion. Our recent acquisition of Pearl Valley is a major game changer for us. Our residents can now enjoy a wide range of amenities unmatched anywhere else in the world. There's the world-famous Jack Nicklaus signature golf course, which is consistently ranked among the top golf courses in South Africa, and there are some beautiful properties on the course. Val de Vie really is the ideal family environment. We also cater to equestrian lovers with facilities on offer for every discipline, from the 2 Hurlingham Standard Polo Fields to our state-of-the-art equestrian centers, and miles of trails. Our horses live in paradise too. Val de Vie has its own wine farm and cellars, producing award-winning wines which every resident can be proud of. I've been blessed to travel the world, but this is the place I come home to. I'm sure you can see why we call it the Valley of Life. And this is my neighborhood.